All right, now this is probably one of my favorite trainings, and here's why. Is because I've trained people for over 12 years in the art of, I'll call it the art, right? Because it's not a science, it's an art. It's art and a science of making money. And I tell them over and over and over these principles, and they just don't get it. And so I had to have a breakthrough myself. My coach is like, Zach, they're not seeing it. You have to bring people with you. And so I was like, how can I bring people with me? And this is what I created. And so I'm going to prove to you that there's only two ways to make money. And really, there's only one, right? And I'm going to prove that to you in this training. And I promise you, it will knock your socks off. And so when you say, I want to make money, first off, we have to understand that money is not this mythical creature. It's not in a cave. It's not in the ground. It's not in gold. Whoa, people are like, what? It's not in gold? I know that's a big debate right now, right? And I'm going to prove it to you here. It's not in somebody's backyard. It's not in a bank. Here's where money lives in the financial statement. It lives on the balance sheet, right? It lives on the balance sheet. Whoop. And so in order, let me move this over here. So it lives on the balance sheet. And so if we understand, first off, let me take you through what these are. And so cash income statement on the left here is how much you make, and what it costs you to make it. So income is how much you make, expenses, how much it took you to make that, right? So what you make minus how much it took you is your net income, right? And then cash flow is where does the cash come from? Because just because you made income doesn't mean you have cash. Two totally different things. That's a little bit deep for this conversation, right? So we can have cash from operations, which come from the income statement. We have cash from investing, which comes from the balance sheet. And then we have cash from financing, which comes from liabilities typically, or you could actually put it over here too. And so then we have balance sheet. And the balance sheet, whoop, so this is, it took me, it took me the simplicity of complexity, right? And so the balance sheet is what you own. Whoop, what you own is the assets. So if you own real estate, it lives up here as an asset. How you own that, how you bought it, financed it, is down here. And so if you have a house that's worth $500,000 as an asset, let's say you have $200,000 in equity and you have a $300,000 mortgage on it, right? Assets has to equal equity plus liabilities. So whatever you own has to be financed through either equity or liabilities, debt or equity, right? And so liability is debt, right? And we're gonna dive into each of these more in later trainings that we're gonna add to this. But this is the simplicity of it. If you own a house, it's either debt or equity, okay? And so cash, when you say, I want to make money, we refer to that, I'm going to say that as cash, right? Money equals cash. And so in the world of finance, these are financial principles, these are financial laws. They have been proven, just like 2 plus 2 equals 4. The stuff I'm telling you is financial law. I have big financial models to prove this. So you're just going to have to trust this. Okay. And so cash, let's say you want to make $35,000 in cash. Okay. And so the question is this is one of my books, right? It's called The Mechanics of Money. What is the mechanism that increases this? Where does this number come from? And so it comes from do, 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 the cash flow statement. So your increase or decrease in cash. Well, it can come from financing, okay? But that is typically liability or equity. So that's outside money that, let's just for practical purposes, say you have to pay it back. It's not yours, it's somebody else's, and they're giving it to you for an investment, either debt or equity. So that's not really, so that doesn't work. So let's cross that out. Cash from investing, this money only comes from money that you personally invested into something. And so people that say I want to become a real estate investor, they're, in my opinion, they're a little confused because the only way to become an investor, if we use the Robert Kiyosaki model, right, of the four cash flow quadrants, you need capital to invest, right? And so, there's that's a whole conversation itself. And so this is the one of two ways. So this is one of two ways, right? You're going to take the money that you have, and you're going to go buy an asset that produces income, either a business or real estate. That's what we're using for the simplicity of this. And so that's one way, right? This is one way to make money. The second and most common way is from operations, right? So this is the second and most common way. Well, where does cash from operations come from? Well, let me move this over here. It comes from, let me just move this down here. It comes from net income. Okay, remember, we're trying to make $35,000. And so if this is $35,000, right? Where does the $35,000? Well, we have to subtract expenses. And so let's say we have $4,000. We're reverse engineering the math. And so let's say our gross income was $39,000, right? And so if we make 39, now let's take this the other way, we're going to change colors. And so if we make income of $39,000, it took us $4,000 to make that. That would give us the 35K that we talked about. That would flow. This is the mechanics of making money, gang. That would flow down here. That would go over here. That would be an increase in cash would be 35,000. And voila, you just increased cash $35,000. Boom. Okay. Now here, everyone's like, great, great, Zach. Okay. Where I still don't know how to make money, right? I still don't know how to make money. I gotta go increase my gross income. Well, we're gonna take it, right? So we're gonna say cash. We're gonna start this over 35,000. Dun, dun, dun. Again, if you have any questions on this, share them. Well, because I know I'm moving a little fast here, but you know, I'm working on how I present this, right? And so now we're gonna we're gonna increase this. Okay, we're gonna talk. Well, how do we get this gross income over here? Well, guess what? We have a wholesaling business. Our average wholesale fee is $35,000. Okay. How does the wholesale happen? This is important. How does the wholesale happen? Well, guess what? One of our many ways is we door knock. And so we work with new people that their value proposition, we're going to talk about this later, their currency is time. And so what they do, this is for, the average person. These are average metrics. Doors knocked are 200, right? They have 60 conversations. They set 2 appointments and we close 1 on average, right? We make $35,000, okay? And just for, there's expenses that we profit share with them and yada, 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 but we're just using very simplistic math or very simplistic to prove the process. And so doors knocked, we give them, a certain amount of leads. They go knock 200 doors. Now they don't have to be 200 different doors. They may knock the same door 3 or 4 times. That would still count as 3 or 4 doors knocked. They have 60 conversations. They set 2 appointments. They get 1 closing. We average $35,000 per closing. That number is a sale. That number goes here, 35,000, right? Then let's just say 0 expenses because we do profit share because there's really no marketing expense. We really have no overhead in that because of door knocking, right? And so $35,000 comes down here to net income. $35,000 comes over here into operations. $35,000 flows down to the decrease in cash. And then voila, $35,000 ends up on the balance sheet. Here is the lesson. Unless you knock 200 doors, there is no other way to increase that number. No other way in this mountain. Like, can you do it through cold calling? Yes. Can you do it through Facebook ads? Yes. Can you do it through some other lead gen source? Yes. But the point I'm proving here is the only way to make money is through sales. Took me 2 decades to get that. I hated sales. I thought it was slimy. I thought it was nasty. Like, because I didn't understand sales. I didn't have the right mentors to show me the the ethics of doing it, right? And how to really it's solving problems. I'm going to take you through that framework here in a minute. But there is no other way to increase this number on the balance sheet unless you go knock 200 doors. Or maybe you can not do it in 100 doors. I don't care what your metrics are, but it starts with the lead generation. And then, maybe let's say you're doing your other, let's say your whatever your sales KPIs are. Let's say, you I don't know, you're cold calling. You cold call 5,000 people, right? You talk to 2,500, and again, I'm just making these up. You, it's gonna be way less than that. You talk to 100 people, you set 20 appointments, right? And you close maybe two deals, right? And you make $10,000, right? Maybe another one is you're using the MLS like a software like Privy or something, and whoop, and you look at 40 properties, you put in 35 offers, you get four accepted, and you close on one. I don't know. You need to know each metric. Each person is going to have their own KPIs. Each person is going to have their own performance metrics, and so this is one that we use. The door knockers, right? It's one that's worked well for us because here's why. On average, guess what? I'm in another program. And guess what? They were telling with us, these guys were doing big deals, like a lot of deals per month. They were telling us that the average wholesaler, average cost of acquisition is seven to $15,000 to get a deal. And so they're spending $15,000 through cold callers, through Facebook ads, through TV ads, through advertising mediums. And what we're saying, instead of having to risk that, we're going to work with somebody and leverage their time, and they're going to leverage our resources, our knowledge. And so that is, and now I said there's only one way to make money. So check this out. Check this out. I'm going to blow your mind here. If you're, right, remember I said there's two ways to make money here. The first one is cash flow from operations, right? So this was one. And the second one is from cash from investing. So check this out. Blow your mind. Cash from investing. Okay, if you go buy, we're going to use stocks because this is a very simple example. If you go buy Apple, right, check this out. How does Apple get valued? Well, there's many different ways to value it because that's my profession. You can asset approach, you can income approach, multiples approach, but here's the reality. On sales, if Apple does not sell their products, the value of their company guaranteed will decrease. Now, the economic efficiency of their business model also has to do with that. The production and proficiency of their, the performance of the business also has to do with that. But here's one guaranteed thing. No matter how great their business model is, no matter how great the economic efficiency of their production systems are, if they don't make a sale, their company will be worth nothing other than the assets, maybe some intellectual property. Well, yeah, that's a much different conversation. Here's what I'm trying to get. The only way to make money is sales. Okay, and you got to get that. Like, I hated hearing that. I hated hearing that when I was getting into this, and I've learned it the hard way, right? And so now we're going to take through, through this process because I'm going to prove to you the only way to make it is sales. And then I'm going to prove to you that money as you know it, this whole concept of the gold standard, this whole concept of Bitcoin, this whole concept of like it doesn't matter. In fact, it's my opinion that people that move to this gold standard are setting themselves up for an even bigger failure. And you're going to see what I mean right now. I'm doing some more training on that. But this is start at the beginning of time. I want to take you back to the beginning of of time, right? Where we had Tom and Tim. Let's use Tom and Ben, this, right? So Tom and Ben. And so Tom was a potato farmer, and so was Ben, right? They had to produce their own potatoes to live. And so, Tom, let's say you need 50 pounds of potatoes to live. And so, Tom he had some great land. He, passed down from generation to generation. He he farmed and he got 100 pounds of potatoes that year. Ben, right? Ben had, okay year. He had a drought in his area, and so he only produced 30 pounds of potatoes. Again, on don't I want you guys to follow, learn to understand here. Learn to understand. So Ben had he doesn't have enough potatoes to live on. Tom has a surplus. And so Ben says, "Oh my gosh, I need 20 more pounds of potatoes. What do I need to live? I need to survive." And so Ben says, "You know what? I'm going to go understand finance. I'm going to go understand accounting, right? I'm going to become, I'm going to increase. Remember, I'm going to go learn something. I'm going to go learn how to do accounting." So Ben goes and he becomes an expert at accounting. And he goes over to Tom and he says, "Hey, Tom, I saw that you had a killer year in those potatoes. You're spending all of your time on your potato farm, becoming an expert potato farm. You probably don't have time to do your bookkeeping, to manage your all of these potatoes." And Tom's like, "You're right. I don't. I need help in accounting. I need help with my books. I need help making payroll. I need help with all that." And so Ben goes, "Hey, I will help you do your accounting, but I need 20 potatoes. Give me 20 pounds of potatoes." Tom goes, "I would gladly give you 20 pounds of potatoes." And so now Tom has 80 pounds and Ben has 50 pounds. Oh my gosh. So Tom still has a surplus, but he has enough to live on. Ben has Ben has enough to live on. But now Ben goes, "Oh my gosh, I just made 20 pounds of potatoes and it didn't take me a whole year to do all this. I did it in a week. I did it in a week." And so then Ben goes to Shelly, right? Shelly's a farmer. She has 500 pounds of potatoes, right? She has a big family farm. Ben goes, "Hey, I will do your accounting, Shelly. I just need 20 pounds of potatoes," right? Boom. Shelly goes, "Oh my gosh, I need to get all of this work off of my plate." So now she has 480. He has 70 pounds of potatoes, right? Now Ben has an excess, right? And so Ben goes to Larry. Larry has 300 pounds of potatoes. I hope you guys are understanding the lesson here, right? He goes, "Hey, Larry, I will do your accounting, 20 pounds of potato." Larry gladly does it, right? So now he has 280 pounds of potatoes and Ben has 90 pounds of potatoes. Now Ben has an excess of potatoes. And so he needs to start spending those potatoes before they go bad. Because what happens with potatoes? What happens with a commodity? It goes bad. We could call that inflation, advanced accelerated inflation. And so he goes, "You know what? I'm going to take some of my potatoes and I'm going to go buy, I'm going to go, I don't know, you can buy anything you want. Let's say he wants a leather case. So he's going to go um, what's the name here? He's going to go to Zeb. That's my brother's name. He's going to go to Zeb, who is a leathersmith. So Zeb is he makes things in leather, and Ben wants a new suitcase or a new satchel. And Zeb says, "Hey, yeah, I'll give you a satchel. It's 30 pounds of potatoes." Right? And so Ben transfers 30 pounds of potatoes, which leaves Ben with 60 pounds. So Ben still has enough potatoes to live on, right? He has 10 more pounds of potatoes. Zeb just made 30 pounds of potatoes. Now Ben has a satchel. Welcome to capitalism. Welcome to commerce. Welcome to the beginning of money. This is literally how money got started. And so there's these economic things called commodities. And this is why we need each other, because you cannot become an expert in everything. And so as we specialize in things, what we do is each of those specialties has a different value. And so the question is how many potatoes is your time worth? Right? How many potatoes is your time worth? What does the marketplace value your potatoes? And so in this world of history of money, now this is really important to understand. We literally started off the history of money, started off with commodities, potatoes. I'm just going to say potatoes, right? Potatoes. Then we move to things like, right, potatoes expire, they go bad. If the Aztecs actually they knew how to freeze dry them. Crazy. I was actually down in Peru. They knew how to draw all the moisture out and put them up in the mountains. They knew how to freeze dry potatoes back in the Aztec time. And so, but then we moved to cacao, cocoa, cacao um, seeds, right? That was a commodity that was used as currency because it had a longer shelf life. And so if you've ever heard of the phrase, money doesn't grow on trees, guess what? They used to literally grow cacao trees, and then they would pick those, take out the seed, and then they would use them barter and trade in the marketplaces. And so, right, we just kept that. Then the challenge again, that was a commodity. Then we used things like deer skin. Again, in different places in the world, they would use different things. Deer skins. If you've ever heard of a buck comes from the a deer like with antlers. A buck. It was worth $1, right? And so it was worth one deer skin. Salt, right? If salt equals salary, that's how the word salary got derived. I'm telling you guys, everything came from somewhere. Like we just didn't miraculously end up with the currency that we have today. There's this evolution, right? And then the challenge with all of this is the shelf life. You can only use so many deer skins. You can only have so many pounds of salt. And so what we started doing was in time, we would use things like teeth and shells, right, would be currency. The challenge with that was, as you can see, you could go and you could find them, like literally create money. And so, there was a problem with that. And so, or they weren't, it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't a standardization, right? Because a different tooth would be a different shape and weight and yada, yada, yada. And then, fast forward, we started using coins, right? I'm not even going to say that. We started using metals such as gold and silver, right? Gold and silver. And so they would use, and then they started, then they took that gold and they started making coins out of it, right? And so they would say, okay, hey, here's a gold coin that is worth a standard in the marketplace. And so we have to remember this, gang. That coin still represents potatoes, right? That coin still represents potato. Right here, it equals value, right? Not just some random, it isn't like you just get some random thing here, okay? And so, and then what happened was the coins became so heavy, and to carry around this, what they started doing was they would put them they'd be like, okay, hey, there's this big building. We're going to call it a bank. My coins are there. I don't want to carry them around. So I'm going to give you a note. Give you a note. Go down there. They know me. They'll vouch for me. Instead of giving you all these gold coins, I'm just going to give you this note. Go down there if you want to collect it, or you can leave it there so you don't have to carry it around, right? And then in China, they actually started using leather bills, right? Leather bills. Okay. And again, all of these represents a potato or a skill set that was added to the economy, right? Leather makers, blacksmith, people that bow and arrows, create bow and arrows. Value. We if you can remember that, you're going to understand why it doesn't really matter what's happening in the marketplace right now with all of this gold standard and the de-dollarization, because I'm going to share that here in a moment. And then eventually, right, we came to the paper bills that we know today, right? The paper bills that we know today, okay, backed by the government. And so that is the evolution of money. And so money equals value. Money equals potatoes. And when governments print money, now here's the thing, they need to, they have to. Now, the money supply has to expand. I'm going to show you here in a minute. But printing money does not equal printing value. That's another thing you have to understand, right? You cannot print money and print value just because that's inflation. The money supply outpaces the value in the marketplace. And so what I mean by that is simple analogy. Don't worry about the numbers. Understand, learn. I need you to understand the logic. Then we can get into like the nitty gritty of this. And so 100 years ago, but 200 years, I don't know, whatever, way back when, how many things could you buy? Let's say all the things known to man, there was 200 things. You could buy a horse, you could buy a buggy, right? You could buy maybe a coffee maker, right? You could buy a saddle. I don't know, I'm making stuff up, right? There was a limited amount of things that people could actually buy. And let's say you could buy everything in again, understand the theory. Don't argue with my how many things there are, or how much it costs. Understand the principles here. Let's say you could buy everything for $5,000, right? Today, let's say there are 50 million things. Oh my gosh, that's probably an understatement. And it would take $1 billion to buy everything. Again, principles, don't worry about the nitty-gritty details, right? And so there is more value in the marketplace. 100 years ago, they didn't have jets, right? Guess what? Every time somebody creates a new technology, that is more value in the marketplace. And so if the money supply doesn't expand, how can we expand the value? And so this is why people that are worried about what's happening with the gold standard and the BRICS and the de-dollarization, ask yourself, where does the value live, right? It lives in us. It lives in the creators. It lives on the New York Stock Exchange. It lives in the companies and the ideas of the people in the United States. It lives in you. You are worth value. The ideas that you have, the courage that you take to go start your own business. Every time you take a piece of wood, you cut down a tree that was valued at $10 and you bring it into your shop and you craft it into something and you sell it for 150, you just created $140 worth of value. Take that over the technology sector, take that over the consumer goods, right? We take raw supplies and we create something and we create value. That is why the money supply has to increase. So that's why we need to print money. And that is why everybody that has ever used the gold standard or a commodity based backed dollar or commodity based backed monetary system, the value outpaced the currency. And so when you're growing in population, there's way more people today than there was 100 years ago. People are living longer, technology's there. There's way more value in the marketplace. And so there has to be way more currency. There has to be way more money supply. And I don't care if it's backed by gold. I don't care if it's backed by gravel. Like it doesn't matter, right? What is lacking is the integrity of it. And in my opinion, the financial knowledge and the financial capacity, people don't understand finance, right? I hear it every day. I see it every day. People don't understand accounting. And so they go out and they overspend and they don't have enough income and they get in trouble. And we have these financial collapses and they want stuff. They want to print money thinking that's a solution when instead of creating value. And so if you want to make money, go learn how to create value. Keyword learn. And so that is why, right? If you have questions on this, let us know. I get really passionate about. That is why this is the only way to make money. You have to go learn to grow rich. That means making money equates to creating value. Creating value equals to solving a problem. The only way you're going to go solve a problem is learn a new skill set. Then you're going to learn and grow rich. And guess what? Ding, 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 sales. Because if you do this for free, you will not make money. There has to be an exchange of value, exchange of currency, exchange of, and we call that sales. And so if we go back up to here, right, in our potatoes example, the sale was between Tom and Ben of 20 potatoes. That was a sale, that was a transaction. And the problem people have is they equate sales to nastiness. Let me see what else I got down here, right? They create sales to the sleazy, slimy used car salesman. I used to think that too, right? Then I got educated. I went and I learned something. And so this is a critical foundation of learning how to grow rich is to go sell something. Well, how do you sell something? Well, you go increase your skill set to solve somebody's problem and create some value. That is it. And the reason we need the money supply to contract, well, I don't think it should ever contract really. It should expand because we as humans are always creating more value, right? We're going to create really a lot more trainings on each and every one of these, but this is the start of the conversation, right? This is the start of it all. And so we come down here, and then what else do I have? Okay, so this is the last slide. And so the question is, all of these people, I don't say all of these, right? I'm working on that generalizations, right? And so people say, well, you need to start a job, or I'm sorry, you need to start a business. Jobs suck and businesses are great, or business suck and jobs are great. There's a spot for all of them, and we need all of them because, right? Businesses need jobs, and jobs need businesses. Businesses are not bad. Businesses are what make the world go round. Businesses are what created whatever you're watching this on. Businesses are what produce the food that you eat. Businesses produce everything in the world. Everything. There's not one thing in this world that isn't produced by a business. I don't care if it's a subsistence farmer that produces the potato, all the way up to the person that creates a jet. A business. You are a business. And so my question to you is, which one for the average person, now if you've grown up in an entrepreneurial family, this might be different, which one of these is the easiest to create $100,000 in, right? I'm going to argue that it's going to be easier to create $100,000 in a job. What type of job is it going to be easiest to create? Well, we already, right? Bing, 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 right here, sales. Go get a sales job. You want to be great at something? Go get a sales job. Become an expert at sales of a product, of a service, of finance. I don't care. I'm an expert in finance. I sell our financial services. I sell real estate. I actually buy and sell businesses, right? I am I become an expert in business development, and then we sell our services, right? And so, however, I gained my skill set in a job. And so what I'm saying is go get a job so you don't have to take the risk of a business. Because if you cannot sell, you are going to fail in a business. There's a reason, right? 90% of businesses fail. I used to say 90 plus. And I'm telling you, the 10% remaining, they're almost all of them are working their brains out. Ask me how I know, right? And so very few people know how to remove themselves from the day to day of this. Very few. I've had to pay a lot of money, a lot of coaching, a lot of consulting to figure out how to all do all this. Again, I had to learn it. And so what I'm saying is learn how to make your first 100K from somebody else's risk. Let them take on the risk. It's called a job. Go get those skill sets. Now, my question to you is, next question, which one of these is it easier to make $1 million? By far, a business, right? By far a business. So it's easier to make $1 million in business, but it's easier to make $100,000 in a job, preferably a sales job, right? And so what I'm telling you guys is use the job to catapult yourself into business. Because if you can't sell, if you don't understand sales, marketing, and finance, right, you're not going to make money in business, guaranteed. Guarantee, because you're going to have to pay somebody to do your sales, you're going to pay somebody to do your marketing, you have to pay somebody to run your finances, and they're very expensive when you first start out, right? And so learn how to do that yourself over here in the job market. And so I hope this has shed some light on the world that we live in and what we're up to. And if you have any questions, let us know. This is my passion, as you can tell, and I'll answer any questions you have. So have a beautiful day and keep watching. See you on the next training.